All right. Hi, ladies. Happy Wednesday. So we're super excited to have you join us today. We have a great session prepared for us to talk about all things perimenopause. My name is EJ. I'm a co-founder of Navi. I am proudly Peri, short for perimenopause. But throughout this 1 hour, you'll hear that sort of peri lingo. So just wanted to introduce that up front. Today's goal is for us to, really for all of us to gain insight and knowledge about what may be somewhat mystery to all of us, which is perimenopause. But after this 1 hour, we really want you to walk away with some actionable peri toolkit that will help you, help all of us sort of guide our journey. And we do have an amazing speaker, guest, I should say, joining us. And we have a lot to cover. And so, yeah, we'll want to make sure that we jump right in. We will, speak up. Okay, thank you. We will make sure that we leave some room for questions. So please, as you are listening through a lot of this insightful nuggets, please jot down either in the chat. Also, we're going to leave some room towards the end. So you have an opportunity to, jump right in and then, we go through your questions too. So quick PSA before jumping in and bringing my co-founder who's going to moderate this session. So one, everything we're discussing today is for educational purposes and should not be taken as individual medical advice. Two, we want your questions. So again, as I said, put it in the chat, be ready to share your question later, later part of this program. And we are recording this session, so will be shared by email afterwards. So not only you can refer back to something that you're like, I want to hear it one more time, but also if there's anybody within your network, in your community that you feel like this conversation is beneficial, then please share. Sharing is caring. So with that, let me bring Marina, who will moderate the dialogue with Dr. G.
Hi, everyone. Very nice meeting you, and thank you so much for joining. I'm Marina Penn. I'm co-founder of Navi. I am a woman very much in perimenopause, and I'm going to be facilitating the webinar and the discussion this evening. I'm founder of Navi, as I said, co-founder of Navi, as I said, and just, a very quick intro on what Navi is. Navi means Korean in butterfly. It's a symbol of love, of hope, of transformation, new beginnings. And the name is reflective of our mission, of our brand mission, which is to support women as they navigate the significant changes of perimenopause. And we see this stage for women as an opportunity to be able to emerge stronger, more vibrant, and transforming what could be a very confusing time into a period that feels empowered and that we end up feeling confident. And we are a brand that's pioneering in perimenopausal care. We offer targeted, natural, high-quality support through botanical supplements that are specifically designed for perimenopause. They are called Peri Essential 5. And this is all to say that this is the way that we met with Dr. Francis. We are based in New York. We have a mutual friend that, in speaking with us, decided to introduce us to Dr. Francis, and we met her last year. And we had such enlightening conversations with Dr. Francis, and we learned so much that we decided to share this wisdom with our larger perimenopause community. So I want to bring in Dr. G, and I want to introduce her to you this evening. Dr. Gabrielle Francis. She has 35 years of experience in natural and holistic medicine. She's a naturopathic doctor. She's chiropractor, acupuncturist, and a licensed massage therapist. She practices in New York. She's the founder of The Urban Alchemist. She also operates Backstage Alternative. That's another venture, and it's her natural medicine roadshow that provides holistic care to performing artists on tour, which are very big names in the music industry. And also she is the author of the RX Start Remedy, a rock and roll doctor's prescription for living a long, healthy life. She's the founder also of Moroccan Elixir beauty brand. And she serves as an advisor for brands like love wellness and veracity self-care. And I think this is very impressive, first of all, and I hope I did not forget anything, Dr. Francis, but very
Thank you,
much
Marina.
welcome
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
and
And
very happy
I
to
love
have
that you shared your what the name Nabi means, because I hope we talk about it later, but I really believe that the perimenopause to menopause is a transformative time for people. It's like a death and a rebirth, like the caterpillar to the butterfly. So I don't know if you thought about that when you were making your name, but I actually think it's really perfect.
Yeah, definitely. And as we kept getting better at learning perimenopause and meeting with experts, the name had like make more and more sense to us. So definitely that sense of transformation and rebirth and just like coming out of the chrysalis as something beautiful and different and renewed, for sure that resonates with what I'm personally going through. I understand that very much, perimenopause is about that transformation. But where I wanted to start with you, Dr. Francis, it's just talking a little bit about how and why educating and supporting women in perimenopause and menopause became so important to you, because you have a very personal, empowering story behind that. So I'd love to start there if you feel
Sure.
good.
When I was in my early 40s, one of my cousins who had been struggling for years with depression and it wasn't being managed properly, she was being managed by taking different drugs, experimenting with different drugs, and she was also suffering from the perimenopause symptoms, although at the time I didn't really know that that's what was going on. And she always wanted children. She didn't get children. And literally days after she went into menopause, when her period stopped, she actually shot herself in the heart and killed herself. And that was very tragic for the family and for all of us. And, me being a doctor, feeling like, how come I didn't see this, know what was happening? And not long after that, I started the roller coaster myself, and I'm a very well-adjusted, healthy person. And I was like, holy crap, this sucks. And I was really suffering because of the reasons we'll talk about in this talk. So as I learned about perimenopause and menopause, I really became passionate about wanting to help women during this time, because I thought, women are really suffering and they have no idea what's happening to them and that this can be different for them. And it also happened that I was working in fertility. And for me, my fertility patients come to me when they're in their 40s. So they're actually in perimenopause too, and they're trying to have a baby. So I found that there was such little knowledge that most women had about their bodies and how things were working. And I just really became passionate about it. And it's really one of my favorite things to work with now, just really helping women to understand how their body works, what's normal, what needs help, and that this is not a time where you're losing yourself. It's a time where you're being reborn, and just kind of reframing it for people that way.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story. And also I feel I relate a lot with just being perimenopausal, doing fertility treatments, having kids, 2 babies in perimenopause, postpartum, and how tough it is, and all these combined with the hormonal fluctuations happening during perimenopause. So definitely I would have benefited from knowing a little bit more to manage a lot of things that happened. But as we're thinking about perimenopause and talking about perimenopause and menopause, I'd love also to level set about peri. Really have you talk a little bit about what is peri, why this happens, how women during perimenopause feel, how it's different from men, or how you can tell. So really, helping decouple perimenopause from menopause and really help women understand where they sit.
Sure. Well, first of all, just to break down the menstrual cycle is very important because I find that I'm seeing women for fertility and teaching them about menopause. And this is the first time they're actually really learning about their hormones and what their hormones do and how their cycle works. So I'm going to break that down first so that you can differentiate between what's perimenopause versus menopause. So first of all, normally we have a 28-day menstrual cycle. And that cycle is preparing us for a baby. So day 1, which is your first day of bleeding, from day 1 to day 14, your body is producing a hormone called estrogen. And estrogen builds up your uterine lining with endometrial cells. And those endometrial cells are going to be the lining that contains the baby if you get a pregnancy, okay? Just before you ovulate, your estrogen rises and then it drops. And when it drops, your brain secretes 2 hormones, LH and FSH, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And what they do is they signal for the egg to be released from the ovary. The egg pops out of the ovary and the fallopian tube grabs the egg and pulls it, and the egg comes through the fallopian tube. If sperm comes up, if you have sex with a man and sperm comes up, the sperm and the egg meet in the lower third of the fallopian tube. And they travel, it takes about 4 or 5 days for them to get to the uterus. And in the second half of the menstrual cycle, we have a hormone called progesterone, progestation. Gets you pregnant, keeps you pregnant. So what progesterone does is it drives that fertilized egg into the wall of the uterus, and it keeps that pregnancy going. And it's the high levels of progesterone that make women have all the feelings of pregnancy, the nausea, the fatigue, the bloating. So the entire purpose of your cycle is to prep you for pregnancy. And if a pregnancy didn't occur, then on day 28, your hormones drop, the lining sloughs off, you get your period, and we start counting day 1 again. So you're born with your total amount of eggs. You have eggs on the left, eggs on the right. 1 month you ovulate here, 1 month here, boom, 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 boom. And what menopause is when we use up our last viable egg, okay? So menopause for most women is plus or minus age 50. It really, a lot of it looks like your mother. When your mother had menopause is very similar to when you will. And official menopause is a whole year without your period. And at that time, when a woman's in menopause, her ovaries actually shut down and they quit producing estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. But she still has those hormones in her second phase of life, which is post-menopause. And in menopause, the hormones are coming. You still have estrogen and progesterone is 20% of what it was before. And that is coming from primarily the thyroid and the adrenal glands, okay? Now, perimenopause is the 10 years before menopause. And what's happening in perimenopause is the egg numbers are dwindling a little bit. The hormone levels are fluctuating quite a bit, partially because the ovaries are getting tired. And so there's a lot of imbalances, fluctuations up and down during that time. And a lot of how somebody navigates that perimenopause time has a lot to do with how healthy her thyroid and her adrenals are. So the way I kind of describe menopause to women is the engine's going to shut down, but your backup generators are going to kick in and they carry you through your second phase of life. But for most women, the backup generators are burned out by the time they're in their mid-30s and definitely by the time they're in their 40s. So the thyroid and the adrenal are very much affected by environmental toxins, by stress, by poor lifestyle, by poor diet, by go, 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 never recharge. So what's happening for a lot of people as they move into this perimenopausal time is instead of this gradual shift from one phase to another, from one source of energy to the backup generator source, it feels more like the rug's being pulled out from underneath you. And one of the most common things I hear for women is, I'm starting to not recognize myself. I remember that feeling myself, is like I felt like I had become a shell of myself. Like, who is this person? All the symptoms I was having and the way I was feeling about things and life and people, I was changing so much I didn't even recognize myself. So it's really important to understand where some of that comes from, but just to know how the cycle works and what actual perimenopause is.
Yeah, thank you for that. I love that you went into detail so we get a clear picture of what that journey looks for women throughout their lives. And also, it really resonates because that's personally what I've been experiencing and started experiencing with perimenopause, is that feeling of burnt out and just being extremely exhausted overall, and not being able to recognize myself, and then just going through all these hormonal changes. So I would love to come back to this and talk later on about what are the things that we could do to prevent that or to help that. But first, I wanted to discuss a little bit about your practice and the women that come to see you, and how you educate your women, the women that come to see you. You just very briefly talked about it, and I love the way that you explained it and put it in words. But how you educate and how you empower your patients to be proactive about their health, mental, physical, emotional, during this critical time, during perimenopause.
So first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about a lot of the symptoms people come to me for during this time, because a lot of times people don't even know that they're actually in perimenopause. So they'll come to me for weight gain, depression, anxiety, insomnia. The cycles are often starting to get irregular. Very commonly, they're getting shorter. They're also often starting to have female problems that they may not have had before. Perimenopause is a very common time to see fibroid cysts, endometriosis, and actually it's a very common time for breast cancer to develop, because one of the imbalances that's very common during perimenopause is estrogen dominance, where the estrogen is quite high and the progesterone is low. And so that makes people more susceptible to breast cancer, fibroid cysts, endometriosis. So people are coming in for all kinds of symptoms. Hair loss is another one. They feel like their skin is changing. Beauty is also a big motivator. And fertility issues, because so many of my patients are trying to get pregnant in their 40s. And it's not as easy to get pregnant when you're in your 40s, because the egg quality has been challenged. The hormones are out of balance, okay? So when somebody comes to me, I do a full assessment of them. And I think it's very important to encourage people first of all, I educate them about what's actually happening, and that you've moved into perimenopause, and that perimenopause is not a disease. It's a normal part of life, and everybody's going to go through it if we're lucky enough to live that long. But we want it to be kind of this balanced period of time where we're transitioning into our next phase, which is super exciting. And I want to touch on that later. But to really understand that these hormone changes and some of these things, these symptoms are not actually normal. Even though they're common, they're not normal. They are imbalances. And so what I'll do is I will encourage them to start with getting a yearly PAP, a yearly mammogram, a yearly pelvic ultrasound, and have a gynecologist that's very open to integrative and functional medicine to be their kind of point person for that, just making sure none of those things are developing. I do very comprehensive blood work. And when I'm looking at the blood work, what most medical doctors are doing is they're doing your general blood work and they're saying, oh, you look fine. And you're like, well, I don't feel fine. And that's because they're looking at the body of the car only. They're not really looking at the gas tank and the battery, and they very rarely check hormones. It is like pulling teeth to get medical doctors to check hormones. I check people's full hormones, including their thyroid and their adrenal, every single year, because I want to monitor and see where they're at on that perimenopausal path and how I can help to kind of titrate and monitor their treatment so that it's kind of a cruising transition instead of one of great instability. So I really think it's important during this time to have a team, you know, for women to look at this as I'm going through a very big transition. I'm going from thinking about only we and everybody else's needs to what I need as well. And because the menopausal woman is about me, and this middle phase is this balance between we and me. And this is a time where you really need to put your health in focus and have a team where it includes a gynecologist and either a naturopath, functional medicine, or integrative medicine doctor, or a very good GP who will be doing yearly testing with you and helping you give you the guidance that you need to balance you during this time.
Thank you. And let me double click into what you were saying, doctor. If, you know, if women need to go to their PCP or OB-GYN and say, these are, you know, what are the tests that you recommend women that might not be able to come to you because they live in a different state or for whatever reason, what they should be asking, their physicians?
Well, I'll maybe I can give you a list that you can pass out to everybody that's
sure.
on the conference, and I think that would be good. So there's the general lab work that your doctors do, your metabolic panel, your blood sugar, your hemoglobin A1C, which is looking at your pre-diabetes risk. They'll also do something called TSH, which is just one of the thyroid hormones. And they'll check your they call it CBC, complete blood count. So that's the body of the car, and that's pretty much what most people get on their physical. I like to do vitamin levels, vitamin B12, magnesium, folate, vitamin D. I do a complete thyroid panel, which includes TSH, T3, T4, thyroid peroxidase, thyroid antibodies. I do estradiol, which is estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA. DHEA is the master hormone, and DHEA breaks down, it's from your adrenal glands and your liver, and it breaks down and it helps your body produce estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So it's very important. And then I also look at the adrenal glands. So the adrenal glands are not tested in blood, they're tested in urine. And the adrenal glands are looking at your cortisol levels, your serotonin, your GABA, those are your calming hormones. And it also looks at your adrenaline, your norepinephrine, your dopamine, your phenylalanine. So these chemicals of the adrenals are kind of regulators of our hormones as well. And so much of what is happening in perimenopause is really coming from not just the estrogen and progesterone being out of balance and going up and down, but the adrenal glands and the thyroid being burned out, you know, and that's where that fatigue and depression and anxiety come in, that so much of that is actually coming from those glands being depleted. So I'll put together a list because I think it's important to take that to the doctor and ask for it, or to work with doctors that are willing to do that testing for you. Because just slapping people on bioidentical hormones is not the answer. We weren't really designed to need them. And perimenopause is actually not the time for them anyway, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And that's like in between that women experience where you cannot benefit from many things that you would get from hormone replacement therapy, but you're still experiencing a lot of the symptoms.
Well, let me just say one thing. One of the biggest things where people think it's for sure it means I'm in perimenopause is they get the hot flashes and the night sweats, okay?
Yeah.
Hot flashes and night sweats are not coming from actual low levels of hormones. They're coming from fluctuating levels of hormones. And it's extremely common that you'll see somebody whose estrogen is extremely high and she's still getting hot flashes. And the doctors will put people on hormones without even testing their hormones, and giving somebody bioidentical hormones or HRT when their estrogen is high is actually pretty dangerous. It puts them at much more risk for breast cancer and fibroids and cysts. So, you know, I don't believe in people taking hormones if they haven't been tested. And you also have to have ruled out that you have any family history of breast cancer or risk of it yourself.
Yeah. And that's like that's a very important caveat. And as you're talking about these things, one of the things that we've encountered ourselves as co-founders, but then also within our community, and the reason that we're doing this series of webinars is just really trying to, you know, just eliminate the myths and misconceptions. So I'm curious, what are the most common misconceptions and myths that you see in your practice of women in perimenopause?
The number one myth is that people think perimenopause is menopause. Okay. Perimenopause is the roller coaster. This is the hardest time. Once you're fully in menopause, the hormone levels are flat and you're actually quite free. And there may be some hot flashes and stuff, but actually the toughest time is perimenopause, not menopause, and they're not the same. So I hear people saying I'm in menopause when they're in peri. That's the biggest myth. Second of all, I think that they feel like that they're doomed for that they think that they don't have hormones anymore. You definitely still have hormones. They're just fluctuating levels of them. A lot of people feel like they're losing their fertility. You're literally fertile until you actually fully go into menopause. But it is a little harder because the egg quality isn't as good, and you need a little bit more assistance. Hopefully natural, but sometimes more medical. There's also the myth that you're going to be losing everything related to beauty and wellness, and you're going to be a dried, shriveled up old prune. But if you start to look at the menopausal women and how much fun they're having because they're free and they don't care what people think about them anymore. So I feel like that's a myth that needs to be debusted. And we're going to talk about that in the end when I talk about the mother and the queen archetype. I think those are, oh, the other thing is that you need to be on hormone replacement therapy because you don't have hormones, you know? So those are some of the big ones. Can you think of any?
Definitely resonates the losing your beauty. That's something that I, you know, just like I give, you know, like I see myself in the mirror every day. I'm just like, even looking at pictures from like 3-4 years ago, it's not that long. And, you know, you feel the difference and the changes. So it's really embracing that change and that evolution, let's call it. So definitely that's something that it fills me with excitement just to see that that's not true. And the many different ways that you can really transform your life and yourself during this time, and make it really, really empowering. But yeah, the beauty one for sure resonates. And thinking also about your practice, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about this, is how can one integrate naturopathy, acupuncture for managing perimenopause symptoms? So what's the best way to do that? And what are other easy, natural, everyday things that we can do that can help us also with symptoms, like lifestyle adjustments? Because you know, it's not everything going to a doctor or, you know, like taking medication or even, you know, like buying things. But then what are the easy you know, natural things that women can also do during this stage?
Sure. Well, with the acupuncture, it's a very beautiful treatment. It balances the energies of the body. It's an hour of time that you're just kind of getting your batteries charged. You're taking off the stress, and then you're regenerating from the chi and the vital life force. But the acupuncture is treating much more of the symptoms, whereas the naturopathic and the nutritional type work that's based on what we see specifically with you and labs is much more getting to the root of the problem. And what I see mostly and what I work with mostly is fixing people's liver and their gut, because that's how your body absorbs nutrients and eliminates toxins, but it's also how you eliminate toxic hormones, the ones that cause the cancers and the fibroids and the cysts, and it's also how we manufacture some of our hormones, okay? And then, you know, when people have estrogen and progesterone imbalances, we have specific herbs that are phytoestrogens and phytoprogesteronic. So phytoestrogen herbs are like the soys, the licorice root, the damiana, the black cohosh. You may have heard of some of those things, even lavender and geranium. The progesterone type herbs are the vitex, the Mexican wild yam, the blue cohosh. So there's herbal phytoestrogens and phytoprogesterones. They have that activity. I also use herbal treatments to help with the thyroid and the adrenals, and nutrients to help build, but I do it all based on labs. Now, what I love about your product, and I'm just going to shout it out because I've been using it myself and recommending it to patients, but what I love about Navi is it kind of addresses in an adaptogenic way a lot of the symptoms of menopause. So the symptoms of menopause: weight gain, blood sugar dysregulation, liver issues, gut issues, hormone imbalances, adrenal issues. You've got like an herb in there for everything. You've got the turmeric for the liver, the artichoke for the gut, the cinnamon and the schizandra for the blood sugar, the maca, which is adaptogenic for the hormones. So you have like an adaptogenic formula that is actually safe for people to take if they haven't seen a doctor and had testing. And adaptogenic means it helps your body to manage the stresses to the blood sugar, the liver, the gut, the hormones in a way that balances when and builds when it needs it and calms when it doesn't. And these are herbs with innate knowledge to know when we need more and know when we need less. And it's a really beautiful formula, and it's not just good for perimenopause, it's good for pretty much everybody. But, you know, that's the kind of therapy that doesn't need to really have a prescription for, where I really think a lot of other specific herbs, you know, I see so many people taking estrogenic herbs, but they have estrogen dominance. In a way, they're making that problem worse. And that's why I think the hormone testing is so important, that you're getting specific treatment for your problem. So naturopathic is very specific based on labs. But lifestyle is something we all have control over. You know, getting enough sleep. And if you have bad adrenal issues and your cortisol is high, you're not able to get quality sleep. But sleep is so important, time to rest. It's very important during perimenopause. You're coming into a time that I call the queen time, where you're needing more time for yourself than you ever did before. Once you move into your 40s, you're craving that time for yourself. And if you don't have that time, you're going to be very angry at everybody around you. You have to balance between we time and me time. And it's not even just emotionally and spiritually. Biologically, you are now wired to need more alone time. We're going to talk about that soon in my favorite part. But that is so important. And women in their 40s, when they have children, really need helpers, because you need to have that time for yourself. You need to have time for your dreams and time for the new person that you're bringing in to manifest. I think people need to have more pleasure, more time in nature, and to not only nurture relationships, but nurture their individual friendships and the things that are important to them. And then, of course, eating healthy food. You know, it's a time where a lot of people gain weight much easier because your metabolism isn't as strong if your thyroid and adrenals are down. And another reason for the weight gain is the fluctuation in the hormone levels. When the hormone levels decline, your body goes into a shock and it has to hold on to the hormones. And partially it does that by holding on to fat because the hormones are stored in fat. So you'll see sometimes a 10 or 20 pound weight gain between 40 and 50 without the lifestyle change. Well, that sucks. So it's even more important to really be eating healthy and really thinking about food and nourishment that's, you know, feeding your body. So, you know, the basic stuff, movement, exercise, keeping active. And unfortunately, because so many people are burned out by the time they get here, that a lot of these lifestyle things are overwhelming for them, you know, and that's sometimes where a product like Nabi or doing some of the naturopathic things or acupuncture can help shift you enough that you can actually do some of those lifestyle things and create more space for them and not feel overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so important because we see many times just like if you don't make time for those adjustments, you will have to make them anyway at some point because you cannot keep up. And we've seen these ourselves. And then with the larger community, how important it is to fill your own cup and to pay attention to what's happening in your body. But I want to go to, you were talking about relationships, and this is something that we have talked before, and I love the way that you explain it and you talk about it, but really talk us about how does Peri impact relationships, which we all know, you know, like you were talking about rage, you were talking about depression. So there's all these different things that different women can get to experience. And what can women in Peri do about their relationships, their partners, their kids, their friends, their family? What's the best way, or what's your advice and your take on it?
So I'm going to talk about, this is my absolute favorite thing to share with people because almost everybody can relate to it, but you're really going through an archetypal shift. And I call it your archetype change is happening biologically, emotionally, and spiritually. You are transforming from the archetype of the mother to the archetype of the queen. So before the age of 40, your hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are extremely high, and they flood your body with this need and ability to give, and get nothing back, okay? The mother, the high hormones of estrogen and progesterone make you a people pleaser, want to help everybody, and your needs last. You're literally wired to put your needs last. That's how evolution has occurred and the species has continued because the mother has kept it all going by giving, okay? And she's wired for that. Her identity is based on who she helps and who needs her. Now, if you don't have kids, and I didn't, but we still are mothering. We're mothering in our work. We're mothering with my patients. You're mothering with your employees. You're mothering with your family, your friends, you know, but your archetype is give, expect very little in return. Over the age of 50, when a woman's in menopause, her estrogen and progesterone is now 20% of what it was before. And these hormones in the brain get very high, FSH and LH, and those hormones are your queen hormones. Those hormones wire you for your creativity and your spirituality. And so it's like this unveiling where a woman in menopause is seeing her needs for the first time, and she's putting herself first. And a queen is still a mother, but she's more like the mother of the world. So when a woman's in her 50s, you can see she's more like, I want to make the world a better place and have more fun myself. This one-on-one helping everybody is not enough for me because the queen is actually thinking a lot about her legacy and what she's leaving in the world to make the world a better place. So it'll manifest in work. Well, women will start to want to be more in managerial or creative positions or overseeing while everybody else is doing the, you know, the contact with the customers, you know. She's very visionary. She wants to get into nonprofits and things like that. She needs a lot of time alone. The queen loves being alone. And the queen could give a shit what people think about her. She doesn't care. If you look at women when they're in their 50s, they do not care what people think. They are not identified by that anymore. They are really moving at their own rhythm and they're very free. And if you really want to see, the queen, her hormones are like an 8-year-old girl, a 7-8-year-old girl before puberty kicks in, okay? From the age 40 to 50, you're going through these hormone fluctuations, and your hormones are like the prepubescent girl whose hormones are up and down, up and down, up and down. Remember that crazy time? Well, that's what you're in for now, okay? The hormone fluctuations. But really, it's like you're dancing between the two archetypes when you're in your 40s. So you'll see this queen archetype. You'll start to get visions of, oh, I want my life to be like that. I want more time for myself. I want to have this kind of project. I want to do this kind of creativity or spiritual stuff. But I'm kind of stuck in this mode of taking care of these people, and the family needs me, and the partner needs me, and the work needs me. And there's a lot of frustration because they're feeling kind of trapped, and they're feeling like they're two people at one. And you really are two people at one. And I think that the first thing is to really understand that. Yes, one day you're the queen and one day you're the mother. And it's a time of people really starting to clean house and renegotiate contracts, because when you set up all those contracts with people, yes, I'm going to give and get nothing back, that's not working anymore. And this is the time where you sit with your partner and you renegotiate, I need more back. Or your friendships, you start looking at your friendships. Why am I friends with you? You do nothing for me. All I do is listen to your problems. Bye-bye. So you'll see so many people break up with their friends during this time. But what they bring in is new friends that are more in that same place. And you don't have to break up with people. You don't have to end your marriage. You don't have to break up with your friends, but it's a renegotiation of the contracts. It's with your kids. It's like, okay, kids, now it's time to learn to do your own laundry. You're going to do your own chores because mommy's going to a belly dance class and a Costa Rica yoga retreat, okay? But like, I think one of the most important things is like communication, because women, if they don't understand this is happening, it can be very abrasive the way they're acting. You know, it's like, do it yourself. And the family's like, whoa, you used to be so happy to do that. I mean, you used to like get in the way to do that stuff. And now she's like, do it yourself. So you understanding it is super important. And then you communicating it in a very nice way that helps the family and the friends and the partner to understand it is super important too. One of the cool things about that time, if you're in a straight relationship with a man, is that men are going through an opposite hormonal change. So as men get older, their testosterone drops and their estrogen rises. So in their 40s and 50s, men are becoming more maternal. They want to spend more family time. They're better listeners. They're let's do homework with the kids. So he's kind of coming in and settling in, and she's kind of like, yeah, bye-bye, I'm on my way out. But you are really becoming different people. And so, you know, understanding that and then restructuring it based on that, you can keep that relationship going. Sadly, I see so many relationships end, a lot of it because people don't know what's happening to them. But I think one of the most important things a woman can do during this time is, you know, most women that I see, they're having young kids when they're in their 40s still, right? So you can't abandon the mother, but you can create space for your queen. You can have a nanny or a babysitter, or your husband take over while you have a little time every day to nurture her so that she can be reborn, because there is this death and rebirth like the butterfly. And the more you understand it and nurture it, the more beautiful it's going to be, that transition.
I love that. I love how you put it in
But
words.
it's, you know, mostly I tell that to people because I want them to be real excited about where they're going. Because menopause is free spirit, badass, wear what you want, say what you want. And it's really an amazing time. And you don't wish you were here when you're there. So I want you to not dread this and to kind of ride the roller coaster with your hands up and screaming. And know that there's excitement on the other side, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's just, it's to your point, it's so important to know what you're going through to be able to understand it yourself and do the right thing for you. And then also with people around you, with your family, your coworkers, your friends, whomever they are, just being able to articulate that, yeah, and be okay with that. So yeah, that's incredibly important. Yeah, I know we're almost at time, so I want to open it up for questions if anyone has any questions. Everyone is very shy, but you
Or maybe it's because I answered all the questions.
or maybe you answered all of them. Definitely, you gave us a lot to think about. And if there are any questions, you know, you can separately share those questions over email. Absolutely fine. And we can, you know, reach back to Dr. Francis and get an answer. But yeah, I don't know if anyone has any questions.
I would
Otherwise,
love to share those labs with people just so they feel empowered to take those to their doctor and find a doctor that'll work with them that way. I think that's very important, that you feel listened to, that if you're not feeling well and they tell you you're fine and you're not, that's not the right doctor for you. You know, there's a lot of great doctors out there that are more willing to dig in, you know. It's not, you know, I want to just say one thing about labs too, is that what is common and what is considered common and average is considered normal, but labs keep changing based on the average population, okay? And so what used to be normal was much more narrow, highly tall, was much more narrow, and now it's getting to be like this. So a normal thyroid used to be like this, now it's like this. So they'll tell someone your thyroid's fine. And, you know, 20 years ago, that would have been a low thyroid, okay? So, you know, when a integrative doctor or a naturopath is looking at your labs, they're looking more at the functional best qualities of it, not just what the average American who's sick and unwell has, okay? So it's good to have someone who digs into those labs in a deeper way. And just because it's normal doesn't mean it's ideal.
And actually, that's a really good point, Dr. G, because a lot of women are frustrated. They do ask for some of these labs done, and then the ranges are so wide. And then when you fall into that you're like normal. And then exactly what you said. I mean, there's no question, but like exactly, because you already pointed out, women are not feeling like themselves, but at the same time, the lab is normal. So therefore, we should be okay. Something else is wrong. So I think this is putting women through a different path. There's one question from Victoria, wondering how to tell the difference between perimenopause anxiety and when you need to see a doctor for something stronger, like a stronger medication.
So I think that first of all, for anxiety, you want to have all of the testing done and see if that anxiety is coming from a thyroid issue, a hormone imbalance, an adrenal imbalance. Often with anxiety, I'll see that the cortisol's high, the serotonin and GABA are low, the thyroid might be too fast, the progesterone might be low. So you want to find out what physically could be causing the anxiety. And I would always try the natural before you get into the medicines for anxiety, because when you get into the medicines for anxiety, those tend to be some of the most addictive medicines and the hardest ones to get off of. I think there is a place for them, but you really want to kind of exhaust the natural routes first. A lot of people are in therapy, and therapy is really great for kind of changing your perception about your life and your belief system. But I'll find that a lot of people are going to therapy for depression, anxiety for years and feeling like they're walking in place with the therapist. And you might get 2 months of getting your hormones and chemicals balanced, and all of a sudden, the body and the mind are in the same space, and you can actually move forward because you're not fighting against that physical depression and anxiety anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? So there is a biological cause for a lot of this that should really be investigated, and you can test those chemicals.
That's helpful. One question that I have is I through sort of like sorry, I'm like long day. Through this Navi journey, I've been meeting a lot of people, sharing stories, and that's been a really such an enlightening experience. I grew up with, well, I didn't actually realize I had PCOS until I was in mid-30s. I meet a lot of women like me where they didn't know. They were just put on a birth control. They learn in their mid-30s. They're trying to understand their fertility, the things like that. And they're like, oh, PCOS. When you have certain, and PCOS is just one example, there could be certain things that are happening to you or your experience because you have PCOS in this context. But then how would one know that this is because I have PCOS, I have some of these symptoms, or is actually on top of that, there's something else like perimenopause that is also is something that I need to address? Like, what would be some advice for someone who kind of like, I know I have some issue, but then what's at the point in time, or how would this woman know that perimenopause is something else too that they need to think about?
So PCOS is actually a blood sugar disorder. It comes from a dysregulated insulin and high blood sugar coming from diet, lifestyle, genetics. It's an epidemic in our culture, and we're seeing it younger and younger. And the dysregulated blood sugar creates an inflammation in the body, which can lead to diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, strokes, cancer. But in some people, it causes these cysts on the ovaries that are a string of pearl of cysts. They call them polycysts. And those cysts cause your body to secrete testosterone, and it shuts down your estrogen and progesterone. And so there's a whole sequela of PCOS where, there's weight gain in the middle, hair, infertility, because she's not ovulating anymore. And so that can actually be treated so well naturally with changing your lifestyle and regulating the blood sugar. And there's medical things that can help that too, but that should be nailed early on in life. I see that so much that women have been put on the pill. The pill didn't make your polycystic ovary go away. This is something that really bothers me about gynecology. This is the most complex system in the human body, is the woman's endocrine system, right? And they have one magic cure for every disease, whether you have too many periods or not enough periods, you have cysts, you have migraines, you have acne, you have headaches, you have, whatever, everybody gets the same thing, and that's the birth control pill. And what you need to know about the birth control pill is it's shutting down your ovaries. And when you test a woman on the pill of her hormones, she actually has the hormones of a 90-year-old woman, okay? And so she's been kind of chemically castrated. And one of the problems I see with that is, first of all, there's some other problems with the pill. Number one, it depletes your body of B6, B12, folic acid, and magnesium. Number two, there's a 30% increase in breast cancer for women who are on the pill, because you're taking synthetic hormones that are not bioidentical to the ones in your body. And if you're in your 20s and your hormones are like a 90-year-old, that changes your pheromones, and your pheromones are your hormones of attraction. So you're giving off the hormones of attraction of a very old lady. I wouldn't want that if I was in my 20s. So there's other ways of doing birth control that are much safer. And what I'm seeing a lot now is that they're putting people on the pill in their 40s as a way of their hormone replacement therapy. And to be honest, you don't know if you're in perimenopause or menopause if you're on the pill, because it's just shutting it all down anyway, you know? So I encourage people to get off of it, clean it out of their system. And if they are going to be on it, to be on the progesterone-based pill and taking supplements that'll help to clean out the toxic hormones and replenish the nutrients they're low in.
This is fantastic. And we already have an ideas for another class with you. But Dr. G, this is why we love you, that you just articulate in a way that's so easy to understand, honestly. And I hope that people who have joined us today, and then also people who will be watching this, will benefit from your explanation of some of these things are kind of very overwhelming for many of us. So thank you. And I know we're at time. So, you know, for those who joined us, thank you. We will follow up with an email with all the sort of the goodies and all the, you know, toolkits in an email format. So you have everything in one place. And then the recording, if you have somebody in mind, you know, you should be able to also share that link with your friends and family and or colleagues or whoever. Everybody deserves to learn a lot of these things that we just talked about. They're just not enough education. So let us, all of us here, to be the advocates and share this information. So everyone else who might be suffering invisibly, or they might even know why they're feeling that way, let's see how we can all help each other. So, so stay tuned for the email, more to come, but thank you guys. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you for having me. It's
Thank
been
you
so
so
much
much,
fun.
Dr. T. Tthank you. Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
ladies.
Have a
Thank you
nice
so
evening. Thank you.
much.
Phones and